I hope you'll give a warm welcome to D. Allan Kerr.
So, I've been having some of those pollination things that I'm sure a lot of you have. So every once in a while, I'm going to stop and drink some water. But I'm afraid to put my bottle on anything here. So just please be patient, bear with me. Also, just to sort of tamp down expectations, I'm not a trained, educated historian by any means. I'm really just a history buff who loves a good story. And I first really became aware of General Whipple about 18 years ago when we moved to Kittery, Maine. And I realized how utterly unique it was for a town as small as Kittery to have one of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. I actually crunched the numbers on this one time. There's close to 20,000 communities, towns and cities in the United States of America. Only 42 of those can claim to have one of their own as a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And Kittery is one of those. So that's pretty cool. But this also made me appreciate that while history has lionized men like Jefferson and Franklin and Adams and Hancock, there were many other sort of unsung heroes who also put, as they said in the Declaration, our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor on the line by publicly attaching their names to this document. And they should get some love too. And as much as we honor these men today, we should always keep in mind that when they signed that Declaration of Independence, they had no idea that they were going to succeed. For all they know, they could have been signing their death warrant. So what they did was very bold and courageous. So just a quick history on William Whipple. He was born and raised in Kittery, born there in 1730, in a garrison home that's actually still located at the back gate of Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. It's privately owned now. But they do have a few years ago, the Daughters of the American Revolution put up this nice bronze plaque to commemorate that as his birthplace. Now, William's father was a ship's captain. His grandfather was a prominent shipbuilder. And in his youth, Whipple shipped out to sea as a cabin boy. Now, you gotta remember back in the 1700s, we're talking about wooden ships and powered by sails, weeks and weeks at a time on heavy seas. This was a very rugged way to make a living. And I love pointing out that while Whipple was in the Second Continental Congress with some of the most brilliant men of the age, or really any age, like Franklin, Jefferson, Whipple tended to be more of a man of action than a man of genius. His letters are very impassioned, and he was a firm believer in the cause, and he had moments of eloquence, but they're also, the grammar is lousy, they're misspelled, but he had the heart. He had the heart. So Whipple, he's a ship's master by the time he's 21, and by the age of 30, he's able to retire from the sea to Portsmouth, where he goes into business. He relocates to Portsmouth, and he goes into business with his brothers, and he soon winds up marrying his first cousin, Catherine Moffat. Now the Moffett Ladd House is today it's a museum and a national landmark, and in the back it's got these just absolutely stunning gardens that are definitely worth checking out. So William moves into the Moffett Ladd House with Catherine and John Moffett, her father, his uncle. John Moffett had actually built this house for his only son, Samuel Moffett, as a wedding gift. But Samuel was a rather shady businessman who wound up having to flee the colonies to escape his debtors. So William sort of moves in to help his elderly father-in-law and his wife manage the mansion. Now in Portsmouth, William emerges as a local leader of the American Revolution. He's on the Portsmouth Committee of Safety. He's appointed colonel of the local militia. And in 1776, he's appointed to the Second Continental Congress as a delegate for New Hampshire. And in that capacity, he travels to Philadelphia to sign the Declaration of Independence almost 250 years ago. He's also later, the following year, made into a brigadier general in the New Hampshire militia. And he winds up seeing action at both the very pivotal Battle of Saratoga and the less successful Battle of Rhode Island in 1778. You know, it's interesting as you look through correspondence and records of the day at different points of his life. You'll see Whipple referred to as Captain Whipple from his days as a sea captain, which, you know, this being Portsmouth, these men were held in very high regard at that time. So they were always addressed as captain. Then he's made colonel of the militia, and then finally general. So when you're looking over old documents and everything, sometimes, you know, it's hard to, you know, keep track of what rank you're at. Now at Saratoga, Whipple helps to negotiate the surrender of a rather haughty British general called Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne. And Whipple is given the honor of escorting Burgoyne back to the coast to outside Boston, where he puts him on a ship and sends him back to England in humiliating defeat. Now, Saratoga, the victory at Saratoga is a very big deal. So for the first time, these upstart colonies are able to show that they can go toe-to-toe with the British Army, which is considered, you know, one of the most powerful in the world. And this finally compels France to decide to go ahead and, you know, help out these colonies that are trying to win their independence. And also, when Whipple was at the Battle of Rhode Island, Saratoga was 1777. Battle of Rhode Island is 1778. And at one point, one of his majors, just a few feet away, gets his leg shot out right from under him by a cannonball. Now, on pretty much all of these adventures, General Whipple is accompanied by a young enslaved man called Prince Whipple. Prince Whipple accompanies him to the battlefield. He actually accompanies him to Philadelphia and Baltimore on his trips with Congress. And he's with him in 1776 when Whipple signs the Declaration of Independence. And one of the more enduring legends of Portsmouth is that they bring back from Philadelphia a horse chestnut, which they bury on the grounds of the Moffett Ladd House. And 250 years later, that tree is still standing. I sort of sometimes get accused of sort of over-romanticizing things, but for me, I really love that mental image of this crusty, salty old white rich guy and this young, strong, healthy, enslaved black man planting that seed together, because I both think they really understood the significance of what that symbolized. And I think it's pretty cool that that tree is still standing there today. And as for Prince, he officially receives his manumission papers in 1784. Water break. I'm going to skip ahead for a minute. This is a famous painting of the victory at Saratoga. And my understanding is that our General Whipple is right there, looking quite dapper. All right, now let's see if I didn't screw this up. Okay. Now, I think one of the great historical travesties of our national story is the fact that we don't have transcripts of that Second Continental Congress. So there's no record of the debates that actually occurred. But man, how cool would that have been? However, Whipple's beliefs are very clearly illustrated in his correspondence. In particular, there's a book that you have right here in the Portsmouth Athenaeum. It's called The Papers of Josiah Bartlett. And it was published by the New Hampshire Historical Society, edited by Frank C. Mevers. Now, Josiah Bartlett is the subject of that book, but it's very thick. But in that book is just volumes of correspondence between Whipple and Bartlett, who was also a signer of the Declaration of Independence, a member of the Second Continental Congress, a physician, and he too was colonel of his local militia. Three things in particular stand out to me when you're looking at Whipple's correspondence. And the first is that he is absolutely, fervently, 100% gung-ho about this cause. And, you know, I was kind of making fun of him before, you know, about his writing and his correspondence. But he had a knack for turning a pretty cool phrase in my mind. And I love this one at the bottom, which I think really sums him up. War with all its horrors is preferable to an inglorious peace. Now, one thing that people tend to forget or just didn't even know is that some of these patriots, they did not want to go to war with England. They wanted to try to broker a peace and avoid the bloodshed. Whipple understood that that this was something that would have to be fought for. And this is another one I like. In order to obtain such a peace as will establish happiness in America, we ought to make the most strenuous exertions for war. We ought to be united in council and formidable in the field. He had a little bit of a poet to him. Now, I think sometimes in reading some of this correspondence, he almost comes across as almost sort of a zealot. And I love this thing on this quote on the bottom. These are part of the exchange with the correspondence between he and Bartlett. And at one point, it seems like Bartlett might have been sort of, you know, down in the dumps, you know, things aren't really going that great. And Whipple, I have to think this might have been sometimes maybe annoying to some of his colleagues. But Whipple, he's just right in there. He goes, I am sorry you want anything to keep up your spirits. I should think the glorious cause in which we are engaged is sufficient for that purpose. The prospect of laying a foundation of liberty and happiness for posterity and securing an asylum for all who wish to enjoy those blessings is an object, in my opinion, sufficient to raise the mind above every misfortune. So, yeah, lighten up, William. But so in his very proper way, he was telling his good friend, Dr. Bartlett, you know, let's suck it up. You know, we've got this pretty cool thing that we're fighting for here. And the thing about Whipple is that has always kind of fascinated me is he doesn't, you know, he talks the talk, but he also walks the walk. This is his sword. His sword is actually on display over at the Moffat Ladd House, and I think it's pretty cool. It, you know, to me, it kind of symbolizes how this is somebody who used, you know, the power of the pen and the steel of the sword, you know, to fight for this independence that he very fervently believed in. I think. Oh yeah, that's right. So the next thing that kind of stands out to me is that Whipple was an early advocate for a strong Navy, and you know we look back on this now and we're like, well, duh. But it wasn't exactly the no-brainer that we would think that it is today. Navies were expensive to maintain, and there were a lot of folks who thought that privateers, folks seem pretty intelligent. You understand what privateers were. They're basically like legalized pirates, and there was a school of thought out there that, you know, just leave it to the privateers because they were doing a pretty good job of harassing the British, the enemy shipping. But now Whipple, remember, you know, he's a man of the sea himself, and he really firmly believed in the efficiency of having an actual militarized navy. And again, this is a letter to Bartlett. He says, I wish more attention was paid to naval affairs. A great deal of prizes have been retaken, which is probable would not have been the case if proper attention had been given to the Naval Department in season. And again, this is one of those moments where he actually waxes pretty poetic. He's talking about the whole issue of the privateers, and he says, by this means, all the officers that are worth employing will quit the service, and you'll have the Navy, if you think it worthwhile to keep up that show, officered by tinkers, shoemakers, and horse jockeys. No gentleman worth employing will accept a commission. This, you may depend upon, will soon be the case, unless privateering is discouraged and the business of the Marine and this department more attended to and conducted with more regularity. His primary issue with the privateers, well, one of them is just the fact that you could make serious bank if you were on a privateer, because what you're doing is you're sailing around and you're capturing, you know, the treasures of other ships, and you're going to get a cut of that treasure. So it's sort of hard, to try to entice, these honorable Navy officers, into serving the public good when they had opportunities like this to cash in. I'm just going to do this one real quick. In July of '78, he really goes off on the privateering in a letter to Bartlett, where he says that the privateering causes the destruction of the morals of a people. Those who are actually engaged in it soon lose every idea of right and wrong, and for want of an opportunity of gratifying their insatiable avarice with the property of the enemies of their country, will, without the least compunction, seize that of her friends. So again, in his mind, I mean, privateers were just little more than pirates. In addition, and in the Continental Congress, he was a member of the Marine Committee. And in that capacity, it's actually General Whipple who is the one who delivers the commission to John Paul Jones to serve as the captain of the Ranger. For somebody who might not get, the spotlight of some of the other founding fathers, it just strikes me how Whipple just seemed to be in the right place in all these key moments. The victory at Saratoga, signed the Declaration, his hand in, basically setting Jones on the path to become the father of the American Navy. He just had a pretty good instinct for those moments. So Whipple delivers the commission to Jones. He also helps appoint the officers and the crew of the Ranger, which then, under Jones, goes on to establish some pretty remarkable exploits, which is a talk for another day. They become friends, and with that, so you have to understand, John Paul Jones is actually like one of my personal heroes. He's Scottish. I mean, real Scottish. I just have, Scottish blood. He's got the ties here to Portsmouth. He lived in Portsmouth while his ship was being built in Kittery. And, we're both Navy guys, obviously, me on a much smaller scale than the father of the American Navy. And he was just like this. He was just this amazing Navy warrior. But he was also like really high maintenance. And he could just be so petty. And there's, well, you see right here, he writes this letter to Whipple where he's complaining about, how the Rangers, wasn't really built to expectation for a ship of this construction. I know this is almost kind of blasphemous, so I'm not sure if I should say it here in Portsmouth, but notoriously, he was not happy with the ship, and he was not happy with the crew, which was largely Portsmouth people. They didn't really hit it off all that well. But when it came time to, get the job done, they all came together. But there's this other letter that Jones writes to Whipple, and I didn't put it here because it's too long. It's just this long rant about a 4-oared boat that was part of the Ranger. And he's just going on and on, complaining and complaining. And then he signs off and he says, I mention this matter to you in confidence as a friend, declaring on the honor of a gentleman that I wish on my part to give it to oblivion. I guess he just had a vent. But at one point, I think this is pretty cool. He is heading to France on the ship. And and Whipple gives him a little note asking him to pick up for his wife 5 yards of black mode for a cloak, 6 yards of white lace, 10 yards of white ribbon, 6 pounds of green tea, and 6 pairs of colored gloves. So it's good to know that Jones was enough of an officer and a gentleman to come to a lady's shopping needs. And then, and then the last thing that really stands out is just the utter lack of, well, no, I'll just say it, just the utter contempt and disdain that William Whipple has for Tories. I mean, this quote up here I really like. So he's talking about, you know, what to do with all these damn Tories. He says, "What think you of transporting them? This I would like exceedingly, but then I'm puzzled for a place bad enough to send them to. Scotland indeed might do, but the difficulty is how to keep them there." And this, I think he was joking here too when he says, "I can think of but 2 ways of effecting this." He was referring to what to do with the Tories. That is death or transportation, and humanity inclines me to the latter. So to be fair, he didn't call for their execution. But one thing that strikes me though is it wasn't just the Tories. Whipple was so impassioned and fervent for this cause that even if you were not a Tory, but you weren't engaged in this fight for liberty, you didn't deserve to be here. I mean, with him, there was no fine line. And he also has a pretty significant amount of contempt for King George, who he referred to as the foolish tyrant of Britain. Now, Whipple has a bad ticker, and ultimately he has to step down from Congress in 1779 and his military duties as well because of his bad health. But he continues to serve the state as a legislator, and he rides the circuit as a justice of the state superior court, like literally riding the circuit. And in 1785, that's what he's doing. He's on horseback when he suffers a medical episode, and he falls from his horse. And he passes away a few days later, but he's lived long enough to see, the victorious conclusion of this Revolutionary War that he was part of. Prince winds up, he continues to live on the property at the Moffat Ladd House. So Prince Whipple is enslaved by William Whipple. William's brother Joseph enslaves a fellow named Cuffy Whipple. And in history, you'll see a lot of indications that Prince and Cuffy might be cousins, but I'm thinking that might just be because they both had the same last name as their owners, as their enslavers. But Cuffy and his family and Prince and his family all wind up living in a small house at the rear of the property of the Moffat Ladd House, where, I mean, you can really, history-wise, you can really just go through so many rabbit holes here. But in that house, Prince's wife, Dinah Whipple, starts the first school for black children. Prince continues to live on the property until he passes away in 1796. And today, they're both buried in North Cemetery, right down here, literally within a few yards of each other. So if you're at North Cemetery, like right, pretty much dead center of the cemetery is an American flagpole, and that's Whipple's tomb, right at the foot of that flagpole. And then if you were to walk away from that flagpole, maybe down, like over around a corner and down a few rows, just literally yards away, you'll come across Prince's marker as well. And then I think just a year or two ago, they put up his wife's marker, who didn't have one there. But again, you know, the sap in me, you know, I really appreciate the fact that these two men who had all these adventures together, you know, are now pretty much, you know, interned in the same solemn ground to spend eternity together. And that's the two greats. Oh, and I'd say like in the early 1900s, they actually gave Whipple a stone, Prince Whipple, sorry, listing him as a veteran of the Revolutionary War, which I thought was a nice touch as well. Now, just a little plug. So every year, the weekend before the 4th of July over in Kittery, where William Whipple was born and raised before you guys took him here over to Portsmouth, every year Whipple comes back to Kittery and he gives a public reading of the Declaration of Independence. And over the past couple years, we've also had Prince Whipple read from, I'm going to go into this a little bit. In 1779, Prince Whipple signs a petition of freedom that's submitted to the New Hampshire legislature. He signs it with 19 other enslaved African men living in Portsmouth. It's tabled by the legislature, but a local newspaper runs it as for the amusement of their readers. So it doesn't really get acted upon until a couple centuries later, in 2013, when Governor Maggie Hassan officially frees those signers who were not emancipated within their lifetime. Now, Prince, for years, he's immersed in the rhetoric of liberty, you know, being at Whipple's side, you know, in battle and all these discussions and in his writings. And there's a thought out there that if that Prince either helped write it, the Petition for Freedom, or might have even been the primary author. But I'm going to tell you something. If you haven't read this Petition for Freedom, take 5 minutes out of your busy summer this year, especially being the 250th, and read that document. As somebody who likes to proclaim himself as a writer, it is one of the most poetically gorgeous arguments for freedom you will ever read, and it's just it's worth your time. But anyway, but my point in all that is that at this same event, when William Whipple reads the Declaration of Independence, Prince Whipple also reads from that Petition of Freedom, which he signed and maybe authored. And then we have these amazing kids called the Piscataqua Rangers Junior Fife and Drum Corps, who, you know, wear Revolutionary War uniforms of the day and play the fife and drums just like magnificently. And then we have militia people who are doing a musket and cannon salute, and you just feel transported in time. So that's all I got. Thank you. Sure. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Do you think Prince Whipple's quasi-cousin was also an author of the Petition of Freedom? Do you know anything about that?
He signed it.
Okay.
And actually, so did Windsor Moffat, who was another, who was the enslaved by John Moffat over at the Moffat Lat House. It's, you know, the thing is, it's really just speculation as to who wrote the thing, because it's never really been documented. But I don't know. I like to think that it was Prince. Yes, sir.
Is the petition longer than what's written in stone at the African burial ground?
I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
It's written in the ground along the pathway, and you can read the whole thing.
Oh, is it the whole thing? Oh, that's.
I think it's the whole thing, but I'm not sure.
Is it the whole thing? Oh, then there you go. You don't even have to like go rooting through the internet. You can just go down to the burial ground.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yes, sir.
So listening between the lines of your lovely talk, I got the sense that this guy's heart was really at sea, not being a general of the army, but really being a person who thinks about ships and
Yeah,
navy and
yeah.
so forth. Is there more evidence than you actually presented? And you did present some about that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of curious how, I mean, he retires from the sea at 30, which, I mean, I guess back then that's older than it would be considered today, but it still strikes me as being relatively young. So I'm not sure what it was that made him retire from the sea. But again, you know, that was a pretty rugged way of life.
Sounded like he'd made his money.
Yeah, he might have just been ready to cash in his chips, you know.
But those comments about the Navy and privateers and so forth suggest that.
Yeah. Well, I think that gave him like a really deep perspective as to, you know, the importance of having a Navy that's, you know, regulated and regimented, and, you know, again, not just a bunch of pirates, you know, looking for booty, you know.
Was he a general in the Continental Army or in the militia?
No, he was a militia general. He and I believe he and Stark were both appointed at this right around the same time. John Stark, he's another unsung character. Oh my God, yes. Wow. Yeah, that'd be a good talk too. Yes, ma'am.
Was Whipple's revolutionary fervor a result of temperament, or do you think there were particular experiences that led to that?
I know that he did have some issues with the Admiralty Court, and you know, the British Empire was not that kind, you know, to our the colonies, the American fleet. You know, I mentioned that rather disreputable Samuel Moffat, who had to flee the colonies. I mean, this really isn't my area of expertise, but William Whipple actually wound up getting implicated in that, because apparently he captained the ship that brought him over there. So when he came back, remember Samuel's also his cousin. Samuel's debtors started coming after Whipple, because, you know, they thought that because of what he had done, he should be liable as well. So he wound up actually having to dissolve his business partnership with Joseph, so that Joseph wouldn't be, you know, caught up in it as well. Having said that, I mean, again, you read through that correspondence. He was a diehard believer in the whole notion of you know, liberty and freedom from that, what do you call him, the foolish tyrant of Britain. And just another thing while we're on that subject, Another thing that I find sort of remarkable about Whipple is one of the business enterprises he had with Joseph was a ship called the Black Prince, which on at least one occasion brought over Africans to the United States around 1764 for the slave trade. And he owned slaves. But over the course of the, being one of the leaders of this fight for freedom, for independence, I really think that he came to gradually recognize, the hypocrisy of what he's doing while holding other people in bondage. And after the Revolutionary War, both he and his brother Joseph both released their slaves. There's another letter, again, between Bartlett and Whipple, where Whipple talks about how, I believe it's down in the Carolinas, there's talk about the blacks joining regiments to help fight for the liberty for their cause. And he says something along the lines of, well, hopefully, this will enable these poor wretches to gain their freedom that, the rest of us, are all entitled to. So I really, I'm not going to wipe away the sins of his past, but I really think he came to a sort of awakening in that regard, which a lot of his fellow founding fathers, by the way, never did. They either freed them after their lifetimes or not at all. So, is that it? All right, thank you.